The massive ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning, their crystal surfaces catching sunlight like deadly diamonds scattered across the heavens. Admiral Thekfer pressed his four hands against the viewing window of his flagship, watching the small blue planet turn slowly below. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the primitive world that would soon bow before the Valkorian Empire. "Commander Valanax," he called to his second-in-command, "what do our sensors tell us about this world's defenses?" Younger officer consulted his glowing display panel. "Admiral, their technology appears centuries behind ours. They use crude chemical rockets for space travel and simple electromagnetic weapons for warfare. This conquest should take no more than 3 planetary rotations." Thekvar nodded, his scaled head bobbing with approval. In his 300 years of military service, he had conquered 47 worlds. Earth would be number 48, and it looked to be the easiest yet. The electromagnetic signatures coming from the planet's surface showed a civilization that had barely crawled out of its own atmosphere. Far below, buried deep beneath the bustling streets of Seoul, Dr. Kim Dae-ho felt the ground shake as the alien ships took positions in orbit. His fingers moved quickly across multiple keyboards, sending encrypted messages to secret locations around the globe. The invasion had started exactly when their calculations predicted it would. Is beginning, he spoke into his headset microphone. "All units prepare for immediate deployment. Remember, we have been training for this day for 20 years. Trust your preparation." The laboratory around him buzzed with activity. Dozens of scientists and technicians worked at stations filled with equipment that looked strangely advanced for a supposedly primitive world. Hidden cameras tracked the alien fleet's movements, while computers analyzed their ship designs and energy signatures. Above ground, people screamed and ran as the first plasma beams lit up the night sky. Military bases erupted in brilliant explosions as the aliens targeted what they believed were Earth's primary defenses: the Pentagon, European command centers, and major airfields disappeared in blinding flashes of superheated energy. The attack looked devastating, but Kim Dae-ho smiled as he watched the destruction on his monitors. Every burning building had been evacuated weeks ago. Every exploding base was empty except for remote-controlled decoys. The aliens were destroying exactly what humanity wanted them to destroy. Sleek metallic pods began falling from the crystalline ships like deadly rain. They punched through Earth's atmosphere, their surfaces glowing red-hot from the friction of re-entry. Inside each pod, elite Valkorian warriors prepared for what they expected to be a simple mop-up operation. "Captain." Ren Timon heard the first pod crash through the street above his hiding place in the Manhattan subway tunnels. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the abandoned stairways as the Void Hunters began their patrol. These aliens were the Empire's finest soldiers, each one worth 100 ordinary troops in battle. But Taman was not ordinary either. He had spent 15 years preparing for this moment, studying every piece of information that Earth's secret intelligence network had gathered about the Valkorian Empire. He knew their weaknesses, their tactics, and most importantly, their overconfidence. His team crouched silently in the shadows. 12 men and women who looked like ordinary civilians, but had trained as intensively as any special forces unit in history. Each carried weapons that appeared primitive, but had been carefully engineered based on captured alien technology from previous scout missions. The heavy footsteps grew closer. Through his night vision goggles, Taman could see the first Void Hunter descending the subway stairs. The alien warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body covered in advanced armor that could deflect most conventional weapons. Its helmet scanned the area with sensors that should have detected any human presence, but the subway tunnel had been specially prepared. The walls were lined with materials that absorbed electromagnetic signals, creating a dead zone where the alien sensors could not function properly. To the Void Hunter, the tunnel appeared empty as the warrior stepped onto the platform. Taman gave his team the silent hand signal they had practiced thousands of times. 12 weapons fired simultaneously, each one calibrated to a specific frequency that human scientists had discovered could penetrate. Valkorian armor at its weakest points. The Void Hunter collapsed, its advanced systems shutting down as the electromagnetic pulse coursed through its body. The warrior was not dead, merely unconscious, exactly as planned. Taman's team moved quickly to secure their prisoner and prepare for the next phase of their operation. Similar scenes played out in cities around the world, in London, Tokyo, Berlin, and dozens of other locations. Small teams of humans were capturing the Empire's elite warriors with surgical precision. Each operation had been planned and rehearsed for years. It's based on intelligence gathered from crashed alien scout ships and intercepted communications. The Valkorian commanders in orbit watched their status boards with growing confusion. Their forces were landing successfully, but something strange was happening on the ground. Communication signals from their elite units were becoming sporadic, and several squads had gone completely silent. Admiral Dekvar frowned as he studied the reports. Perhaps this primitive world had more fight in it than expected, but no matter. The Empire had faced guerrilla resistance before on other worlds. It was merely a matter of applying sufficient force until the population surrendered. He had no idea that the real war was only just beginning. Admiral Dekvar stared at the holographic display showing his fleet's positions around Earth. But the bright dots that represented his ground forces kept disappearing one by one. 3 days had passed since the invasion began, and what should have been a simple conquest was turning into a nightmare. "How many units have we lost contact with now?" he asked his communications officer, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. 17 squads in the last 12 hours, Admiral, the officer replied, his scales turning a pale shade of fear. "That brings our total missing units to 43 since the landing began." Dekvar's forehands clenched into fists. 43? Squads of elite void hunters, each one trained from birth to be the perfect warrior. These were not ordinary soldiers who might panic or make mistakes. They were the Empire's finest, equipped with the most advanced weapons and armor in the galaxy. Lieutenant Kextall approached the command console with obvious reluctance. His young face showed the strain of delivering bad news repeatedly over the past few days. "Sir, we have another problem." Hunter Squadron 7 was patrolling the Tokyo sector when their signals went dead. That entire area has gone silent. Admiral's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical map. Tokyo was supposed to be secure. His forces had landed there without resistance and established 3 command posts. Now the entire region showed as a black zone on their communication grid. Far beneath the streets of Seoul, Lee So-young sat surrounded by dozens of glowing computer screens in a bunker that officially did not exist. Her fingers danced across multiple keyboards as she monitored radio frequencies that the aliens believed were secret. The Valkorian Empire had been sending scout ships to study Earth for decades, never realizing that each crashed probe gave humanity more information about their technology. "Team Alpha, move to position 7, she spoke softly into her headset microphone. "The enemy patrol will reach your location in 6 minutes. Team Beta, prepare to cut off their escape route through the old water tunnels." On her main screen, colored dots showed the positions of alien forces across Asia. The Valkorians thought they were hunting scattered human survivors, but they were actually being herded into carefully prepared traps. Every movement they made was predicted and countered by resistance fighters who knew their own cities better than any invader ever could. "Confirmed control," came the whispered reply from Team Alpha leader. "We see 3 void hunters approaching from the north. It's beginning intercept pattern now." Lee So-young smiled grimly as she watched the tactical display. The aliens were walking into another ambush, just like the dozens before. Their advanced sensors could not detect the human fighters moving through maintenance tunnels and abandoned subway lines that had been forgotten for decades. Park Ginwoo crawled through a narrow ventilation shaft beneath downtown Seoul, his team of 8 following silently behind him. They had been underground for 2 days, moving through a network of tunnels that connected subway systems, old bunkers, and utility passages. Above them, alien patrols searched for human resistance, never thinking to look in the forgotten spaces. Beneath their feet, "Target acquired," whispered his second-in-command, peering through a grate that looked up at street level. 3 void hunters moving east toward the government district. Jinwoo nodded and checked his weapon. It looked like an ordinary hunting rifle, but human engineers had modified it with technology learned from studying crashed alien ships. The electromagnetic pulse it fired was tuned to a specific frequency that could overload Valkorian neural systems through gaps in their armor. His team moved into position with practiced silence. They had rehearsed this type of ambush hundreds of times in training exercises that the aliens knew nothing about. Each fighter knew exactly where to be, and when to fire for maximum effect. The first Void Hunter stepped directly over the hidden grate, his heavy boots making the metal creak slightly. The alien sensors swept the area but detected nothing unusual. The tunnels below had been lined with materials that absorbed electromagnetic signals, making them invisible to advanced detection equipment. Jin-Wu raised his hand and counted. Down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. 8. Weapons fired simultaneously through carefully placed openings in the street. The electromagnetic pulses struck the Void Hunters from multiple angles, finding the weak points in their armor that human scientists had identified years ago. The 3 elite warriors collapsed instantly, their nervous systems temporarily overloaded by the precisely calibrated energy bursts. Within seconds, Ginwu's team had emerged from hidden passages to drag the unconscious aliens underground. By the time backup forces arrived, the street was empty except for scorch marks on the pavement. Similar operations were happening in cities around the world. In London, human fighters used the old World War II tunnel systems to move unseen beneath the city. In New York, abandoned subway lines provided perfect hiding places for ambush teams. Every major population center had become a maze of traps. Where the hunters were being systematically hunted, the Valkorian commanders in orbit watched their forces disappear with growing alarm. Their communication networks showed empty zones spreading across the planet like a disease. Elite squads would report normal patrol status one moment, then vanish completely the next. "Admiral," reported the tactical officer, his voice shaking, "we are losing contact with ground forces faster than we can deploy replacements. At this rate, we will have no operational units left within a week." Dekvor stared at the tactical display, watching another bright dot fade to black as Hunter Squadron 9 went silent in the London sector. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The primitive humans were not running away or hiding in terror as expected. Instead, they were systematically destroying the Empire's finest warriors using tactics that seemed impossible for such a backward civilization. Captain Korthex stepped carefully through the rubble of what had once been a London research building. The structure looked like any other human facility that had been damaged in the initial bombardment. But something about this place felt different. His advanced sensors detected unusual energy readings coming from deep underground, and he had volunteered to investigate personally when 3 more Void Hunter squads had vanished in this area. The alien captain was one of the Empire's most experienced field officers, having survived battles on 20 different worlds. His forearms moved with practiced efficiency as he checked his weapons and scanning equipment. If there were answers to be found about the missing warriors, he would find them as he descended into the building's lower levels. Korthex discovered that the damage above was just a disguise. Hidden beneath the destroyed research facility was a vast underground complex filled with working laboratories and advanced equipment. The technology looked human in design, but it was far more sophisticated than anything the Empire's intelligence reports had suggested these primitives could build. "Impossible," he whispered to himself, studying displays that showed detailed diagrams of Valkorian ship designs and biological charts, mapping his own species' anatomy with frightening accuracy. Soft sound behind him made Korthex spin around, his weapons ready. But instead of enemy soldiers, he found himself facing a wall of monitors showing recorded video footage. His blood ran cold as he watched the screens display scene after scene of Void Hunters being captured by ordinary-looking humans. On one monitor, he saw a team of his elite warriors surrounded and taken down by people who looked like shopkeepers and office workers. Another screen showed teachers and students working together to disable advanced alien armor using weapons that should not have existed on this primitive world. The humans moved with precision and knowledge that seemed impossible for a species the Empire had dismissed as barely civilized. But the most shocking footage showed something that made Korthex question everything he knew about this invasion. The humans were not just randomly fighting back. They knew exactly where each Valkorian weak point was located. They understood how his people's nervous systems worked. They had studied Valkorian technology so thoroughly that they could predict and counter every tactical move. "Welcome, Captain." Korthax. The voice came from behind him, speaking his name in perfect Valkorian language. He turned to see a middle-aged human man emerging from the shadows. The man wore simple clothes and looked completely harmless, but something in his eyes suggested he was far more dangerous than any warrior. "I am Dr. Choi Minho," the human said calmly. "I have been waiting to meet one of your officers face 2. Face. Korthax raised his weapons, but the human held up a small device that emitted a high-pitched sound. Immediately, the alien captain felt his muscles begin to weaken and his thoughts become cloudy. He tried to fight the effect, but his body refused to obey his commands. "Please do not resist," Minho said gently, as Korthax collapsed to his knees. "The neural disruptor is calibrated to your specific brainwave patterns. Fighting it will only make the paralysis more uncomfortable." As consciousness faded, Korthax heard the human begin to explain something that changed his understanding of everything. When he awoke hours later, he found himself in a holding cell with walls that hummed with the same frequency that had disabled him. "You are probably wondering how we knew so much about your people," Minho said, sitting in a chair outside the cell. "The answer is quite simple. Your empire has been sending scout ships to study our world for over 50 years. What your leaders never realized is that we detected every single one of them." The human scientist activated a holographic display that showed the wreckage of dozens of Valkorian probe ships scattered across Earth. Each crash site was marked with dates going back decades, and detailed analysis reports showed how human scientists had studied every piece of recovered technology. "Each crashed ship taught us something new," Minho continued. "We learned about your energy systems, your communication frequencies, your biological makeup, most importantly, your weaknesses. 20 years ago, we discovered that Valkorian neural pathways are extremely sensitive to a specific electromagnetic frequency. Once we knew that, developing weapons to exploit this weakness was simply a matter of engineering." Korthax stared at the evidence in growing horror. Every surveillance mission his people had conducted, every secret probe they had sent to gather intelligence about Earth's defenses, had actually been giving the humans more information about the Valkorian Empire. "We have been preparing for this invasion since your empire first noticed our world," Minho explained. "Every crashed probe, every captured piece of technology, every biological sample from your dead scouts helped us understand exactly how to defeat your forces. We knew you would come, and we spent decades getting ready." The realization hit Korthax like a physical blow. Earth was not a primitive target that the Empire had stumbled upon. It was a carefully prepared trap that had been decades in the making. The humans had been studying their would-be conquerors for longer than most Valkorian warriors had been alive, in another part of the facility. Dr. Hondun walked between rows of holding cells containing captured void hunters. Each cell was lined with neural dampening equipment that kept the alien prisoners docile and unable to use their natural abilities. Human scientists moved between the cells, conducting careful studies of their captives while learning everything they could about Valkorian technology and biology. "How many more do we have in custody?" asked her assistant. 47 so far?" Dayun replied with satisfaction. "Each one gives us more data about their military structure and capabilities. By the time we are finished studying them, we will know the Valkorian Empire better than they know themselves." Above ground, Admiral Vekfer received the transmission from Captain Korthax's emergency beacon and felt his confidence crumble completely. The message was brief but devastating. The humans were not primitive at all, and the invasion was walking into a trap that had been 50 years in the making. The first rays of sunlight touched the Earth's surface as hidden installations across every continent began powering up systems that had been waiting decades for this moment. In underground bunkers from Alaska to Antarctica, massive electromagnetic pulse generators hummed to life with a sound that vibrated through the planet's crust like a deep heartbeat. Admiral Dekver was reviewing casualty reports on the bridge of his flagship when the attack began. One moment his tactical display showed scattered human resistance cells causing minor disruptions. The next moment, every screen flashed red as warning signals flooded in from across the globe. "Admiral," his communications officer shouted, "panic." Clear in his voice, "We are receiving emergency signals from all ground units simultaneously. Something is happening planet-wide." The massive pulse generators fired as one, sending waves of precisely calibrated electromagnetic energy into Earth's atmosphere. The frequency had been perfected through 20 years of studying captured Valkorian technology and biology. Every alien pilot, gunner, and crew member within range felt their neural systems suddenly overwhelmed by the invisible assault. Across the Pacific Ocean, Valkorian patrol ships began falling from the sky like metallic rain. Their crews collapsed. At their control stations, as the neural disruption frequency flooded their brains with signals they could not process. Advanced alien aircraft that had dominated Earth's skies for a week suddenly became helpless. Metal coffins plummeting toward the ocean, deep beneath what appeared to be a simple university campus outside Tokyo. Commander Bae-Soo-jin watched her tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The bunker around her contained enough computing power to coordinate military operations across half the planet. But from the surface, it looked like nothing more than a geology research center. "All Pacific Sector targets are responding to the pulse," reported her tactical officer. "Valkorian air units are going down across Japan, Korea, and the Philippines. Their orbital ships appear to be losing contact with ground forces." Sujin nodded as she watched red dots disappear from her screens. Each represented an alien aircraft or patrol unit that had been neutralized by the neural disruption field. The aliens had never suspected that the supposedly primitive humans had been preparing a coordinated global assault for decades. "Phase 2 is now active," she announced into her communications headset. "All airfields, launch your squadrons. Show them what Earth's real Air Force looks like. Across the world, what the Valkorians had dismissed as crude human aircraft hangars suddenly revealed their true nature. Hidden doors opened in mountainsides, underground caverns, and beneath seemingly abandoned buildings. The fighters that emerged looked nothing like the primitive jets the aliens expected to face. "Captain." Kim Jae-soon felt his heart pound with anticipation as his fighter jet lifted off from a runway that had been disguised as a farmer's field. The aircraft around him looked like ordinary human military planes from the outside, but their engines had been upgraded with technology learned from captured Valkorian scout ships. Their weapon systems had been completely rebuilt to exploit every weakness human scientists had discovered in alien defenses. "Ghost Squadron, this is Ghost Leader." He spoke into his radio as 12 modified fighters formed up around him. "All targets are confirmed disabled. We have multiple alien cruisers falling through our airspace with no active defenses. This is what we trained for." His squadron screamed through the atmosphere at speeds that would have been impossible with purely human technology. The alien cruisers that had seemed invincible just hours before were now helpless targets tumbling through the sky. Their crews were unconscious from the neural pulse. Their defensive systems had shut down automatically when their operators collapsed. Jae-soon lined up his first target, a massive Valkorian transport ship that was slowly spinning as it fell toward the Pacific Ocean. The electromagnetic cannon mounted beneath his fighter's wing charged up with a high-pitched whine that he could feel through his entire aircraft. "Target locked," he announced, and fired. The beam that emerged from his weapon was invisible to the naked eye, but its effects were devastating. The pulse penetrated the alien ship's shields as if they did not exist, overloading the vessels, power systems, and causing a cascade failure that rippled through its entire structure. The transport exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from orbit. Similar scenes played out around the globe as Earth's hidden air force engaged the crippled Valkorian fleet. Human pilots who had trained for years uncaptured. Alien technology used their enemies' own weapons against them with surgical precision. Every shot was calculated to exploit weaknesses that had been discovered through decades of secret research. Admiral Vekfer watched his invasion fleet being systematically destroyed and realized with growing horror that his forces had never been in control of this battle. The humans had not been fighting a desperate defense against superior technology, They had been herding the Valkorian forces into carefully prepared kill zones where every advantage belonged to Earth. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with a shaking voice, "we have lost contact with 80% of our ground forces. Our remaining air units are unable to respond to commands. The humans appear to have some kind of neural weapon that can disable our crews from long range." The admiral stared at his displays as more ships disappeared from the tactical map. His supposedly primitive enemy had been studying his people for generations, learning their weaknesses and preparing countermeasures for every piece of Valkorian technology. The invasion was not just failing, it was being turned into a complete massacre. "Prepare all remaining forces for immediate withdrawal," he ordered, though he suspected it was already too late. The humans had been planning this moment for 50 years, and they were not going to let the Valkorian Empire escape to threaten Earth again. The massive crystalline flagship of Admiral Vekver plunged through Earth's atmosphere like a dying star, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction of uncontrolled descent. The neural disruption pulse had overwhelmed the crew during their attempted escape, leaving the great warship to fall helplessly toward the Pacific Ocean below. Human rescue vessels were already moving into position before the alien ship hit the water. The salvage teams had been practicing this exact scenario for months, using detailed plans based on captured Valkorian ship designs. Within 2 hours of the crash, specialized recovery boats equipped with alien-compatible docking systems had attached themselves to the sinking vessel. Commander Le Kung Su walked through the corridors of the captured flagship, his boots echoing. In passages that had never been designed for human feet, emergency lighting cast strange shadows on walls covered with alien symbols. But human technicians were already working to understand and control every system aboard the massive ship. "Sir," called one of his officers from the bridge, "we have accessed their navigation computers. The star charts are intact." Kung Su approached the main display and felt his breath catch in his throat. Spread before him was a three-dimensional map showing the entire Valkorian Empire, with hundreds of star systems marked as conquered territories. Trade routes, military bases, and resource-rich worlds were all clearly labeled in the alien database. "Brought us their entire military intelligence network," he said with amazement. "We now know the location of every important world in their empire, every weakness in their defenses, every supply line that keeps their civilization running." The holographic display rotated slowly, showing distant galaxies that humanity had never dreamed of reaching. But now, with captured Valkorian technology and detailed maps of their territory, those impossible distances seemed much smaller. In a secure conference room deep beneath Geneva, the surviving Valkorian officers sat in specially designed chairs that kept them under the influence of neural dampening fields. Their once-proud uniforms were torn and stained, and their four-armed bodies slumped in defeat. Admiral Vekver, the architect of the failed invasion, stared at the table with eyes that had lost all their former arrogance. Park Haijin entered the room wearing the simple business suit of a diplomat, but she carried herself with the authority of someone who spoke for the entire human species. Behind her walked representatives from every major nation on Earth, united for the first time in their planet's history by the shared experience of successful defense against alien invasion. "Admiral Vekver," she said, taking her seat across, "from the defeated alien commander, your empire sent you to conquer what you believed was a primitive world. Instead, you have delivered your most advanced technology directly into our hands." The admiral looked up with tired eyes that had seen his entire fleet destroyed by an enemy he had underestimated. "What do you want from us, human?" "Information," Haijin replied simply. "You can choose to help us understand your empire's remaining weaknesses and assist in preventing future attacks on Earth. In return, you and your surviving crew will be treated as prisoners of war under our protection." She leaned forward slightly, her voice becoming harder. "Or you can refuse to cooperate and join the rest of your elite warriors in our neural dampening facilities, where you will spend the remainder of your lives unable to think clearly enough to cause any trouble." That Javer understood the choice being offered. His military career had taught him to recognize when a battle was truly lost. "Your species has proven more dangerous than our intelligence reports suggested. What guarantee do I have that you will honor your promises? The same guarantee your empire gave to the 47 worlds you conquered before attempting to add Earth to your collection? Hyjin answered coldly. The difference is that we actually keep our word. Several of the captured Valkorian officers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, realizing that the humans knew far more about the Empire's military history than should have been possible. The aliens were beginning to understand that their enemies had been preparing for this conflict much longer than anyone had imagined. Far from Earth, on the hidden side of the moon, where no telescope could observe their activities, massive construction platforms floated in the vacuum of space. Human engineers worked alongside captured Valkorian technology specialists, building something that had never existed before in the galaxy's history project. Commander Shindong Wook stood in the observation deck of the main construction facility, watching robotic systems assemble warships that combined the best of human innovation with captured alien technology. The vessels taking shape in the zero-gravity environment were larger and more heavily armed than anything the Valkorian Empire had ever created. "How many ships will be ready for the first deployment?" asked his assistant, a young engineer who had spent the last 5 years studying alien propulsion systems. 24 heavy cruisers and their support vessels, Dong-wook replied. Each one equipped with weapons specifically designed to penetrate Valkorian defenses, powered by their own energy systems, and crewed by humans who now understand their technology better than they do themselves. He gestured toward the star charts displayed on the wall, showing the location of the Valkorian homeworld and its primary military installations. The information had been extracted from the captured flagships' computers and verified through interrogation of prisoner officers. For 50 years, the Valkorian Empire believed they were studying us while remaining safely hidden, Dong-wook continued. They thought they could invade whenever it suited their convenience, treating Earth like any other primitive world to be conquered and exploited. The construction robots continued their work, welding hull plates and installing weapon systems on ships that would soon carry the war directly to the Empire's doorstep. Humanity had been underestimated once, but they would not make the same mistake in return. Soon we will visit their worlds with the same invitation they brought to ours, Dong-wook said quietly. Let us see how the Valkorian Empire responds when the hunters become the hunted.